Emily Carter sat at her desk, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she finalized the latest report for the morning meeting. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, blending into the low hum of office chatter and ringing phones. It was a typical Tuesday at Global Dynamics. The kind of day that felt endless, just another stack of emails. A few client calls, and the ticking of the clock. Emily was used to the routine. She had spent the last 5 years pouring everything she had into her role as a senior project coordinator. She stayed late, took on extra work, and ensured every task she touched was done to perfection. The clients loved her, and the numbers spoke for themselves. She delivered results. But that morning, something felt off. David Sloan, her department manager, hadn't passed by her desk for his usual morning rounds. There was no casual small talk, no checking in about projects or deadlines. In fact, David had been unusually quiet all week. Emily shook off the thought, telling herself it didn't matter. Maybe he was busy, or maybe he had finally taken a day off to play golf, as he often bragged about doing. Either way, she had more pressing concerns. Her upcoming performance review was just around the corner, and she was determined to impress. At exactly 10:02 a.m., her phone buzzed on her desk. She glanced at the screen. Helen Marks, HR department. Emily frowned. HR rarely reached out unless something important was happening. With a sense of unease, she picked up the phone. Hello? Emily. Helen's voice was polite but brisk. David Sloan would like to see you in his office immediately. Please come down right away. Emily's heart sank. Helen never sounded nervous, but there was something about her tone, something clipped, almost rehearsed, that made Emily's stomach twist. Is something wrong? She asked cautiously. I think it's best if you speak with David directly, Helen replied. He'll explain everything. The line went dead. Emily stared at her phone, her mind racing. She looked around the office, but no one else seemed to have noticed. The other team members were still buried in their work, oblivious to the sinking dread that was building in her chest. Maybe it's nothing, she muttered to herself, gathering her notebook and pen. She adjusted her blazer, smoothed out her skirt, and stood up, forcing her shoulders back. Whatever this was, she wasn't going to show weakness. As Emily made her way down the hallway to David Sloan's corner office, she couldn't shake the sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong. When she knocked and stepped inside, David was seated behind his massive mahogany desk, his back straight, his expression unreadable. The blinds were drawn, casting shadows across the room. Helen Marks sat in a chair to the side, holding a clipboard, her lips pressed into a thin line. David glanced up, but there was no warmth in his gaze. Emily, sit down, he said curtly, gesturing to the chair across from him. Emily hesitated for only a second before lowering herself into the chair. She clutched her notebook, her palms damp with sweat. David folded his hands on the desk, his voice cold and professional. Emily, I'll get straight to the point. We've been reviewing your performance, and as of today, we've decided to terminate your position here at Global Dynamics. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? Emily's voice came out as a whisper. She blinked, trying to process what she'd just heard. David, I don't understand. My numbers have been solid. My work. David cut her off with a raised hand. It's not up for debate. Emily, this decision is final. HR has already prepared the severance paperwork. You'll need to pack your belongings and leave the building immediately. Her chest tightened. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. This can't be right, she managed to say, her voice shaking. There has to be a mistake. My performance has been good, you know that. David's face remained impassive. We're moving in a different direction. A cold realization washed over Emily. This wasn't about her performance. David had never liked her. He'd always found subtle ways to undermine her, to take credit for her work when it suited him. She had spent years pushing past his dismissive attitude, hoping her results would speak louder than his bias. And now, here she was, fired. She turned to Helen, who refused to meet her eyes. You're seriously letting him do this? Emily demanded, her voice rising. After everything I've done for this company? Helen shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, Emily. The decision has been made. Emily felt a lump in her throat, but she refused to let them see her break. Fine, she said stiffly, rising from her chair. If this is how you treat your best people, then maybe I'm better off somewhere else. She turned on her heel and marched out of the office. ignoring the burning stares of her colleagues as she passed. Her mind was a blur. Her heart pounding. Fired. Just like that. She reached her desk and began to pack her things. Her hands trembling as she shoved her belongings into a box. Whispers erupted around her, but she ignored them. Then, just as she grabbed her coat and turned to leave, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from our Emily Carter. Please return to the office immediately. There has been a change. Emily stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. What on earth was going on? Emily stood frozen in place, staring at the message on her phone. A change? Had they realized they'd made a mistake? Was this some cruel joke? Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Her coworkers' hushed whispers filled the air, but Emily tuned them out. With her heart pounding, she turned around and marched back toward David Sloane's office. The same hallway that just minutes ago had felt like a walk of shame. Now, it was a strange walk of curiosity and quiet resolve. When she entered the office for the second time, Helen Marks was still there, but David Sloane was noticeably absent. Instead, a new face greeted her, a man in his early 50s. Sharp gray suit, and a commanding presence that filled the room. Emily didn't recognize him, but the air around him demanded respect. Helen looked up, visibly flustered but trying to hold her composure. Emily, thank you for coming back so quickly. This is Mr. James Weston, the company's regional director. Mr. Weston extended a hand, his smile genuine yet professional. Emily Carter, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please, have a seat. Emily took the offered seat, her confusion growing with every second. Thank you. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what's happening here. She hesitated, her pride catching in her throat. I was just told to leave. James Weston nodded, leaning forward slightly. I know, and I'm sure this is all very confusing for you. But let me explain. I've been conducting an internal review of this branch for the past few months, particularly focusing on its leadership and team dynamics. What I've found is troubling. Emily's brow furrowed. Troubling? Weston's expression hardened. Yes, under Mr. Sloane's leadership, this department has been underperforming despite the hard work of people like you. Clients have expressed frustration, and the numbers don't lie. More concerning is the feedback I've received about Mr. Sloane himself. He has repeatedly taken credit for his team's work while deflecting blame onto others. Your termination, quite frankly, was the last straw. Emily blinked in shock, unable to hide her surprise. I had no idea. He never seemed to value my input. But I didn't know it was this serious. Weston nodded. That's what happens when poor leaders are allowed to stay in power too long. The good people get pushed aside. He paused, studying her carefully. Emily, you've been with this company for 5 years. Your performance metrics are exceptional, and your colleagues have nothing but good things to say about you. In short, you're the type of leader we need right now. Emily stared at him, stunned. Leader? Weston leaned back and smiled. Effective immediately. You are being promoted to department manager. You'll replace Mr. Sloane, who has been removed from his position and asked to leave the company. The room seemed to spin for a moment as Emily tried to process his words. Promoted? She had walked out of this office fired not 15 minutes ago. And now she was being offered Sloane's job. I don't know what to say. Emily stammered. This is so unexpected. Weston's expression softened. It's a lot to take in. I know, but you earned this. You're not here by accident. You've proven your ability to handle pressure, to produce results, and to inspire your peers, even when it wasn't easy. Emily took a deep breath, her heart still racing. She glanced at Helen, who was watching her with a mixture of relief and approval. What happens next? Emily asked cautiously, her voice steadying. Weston stood up, extending his hand again. What happens next is up to you. I'm trusting you to rebuild this department the right way. Set a new tone, build a team you're proud of, and show this company what you're capable of. Emily rose to her feet and shook his hand, a new sense of determination filling her chest. I won't let you down. Weston nodded approvingly. I believe you. Helen will handle the transition paperwork. Welcome to your new role, Manager Carter. The walk back to her department felt entirely different this time. Emily wasn't the humiliated employee anymore, she was their new boss. The realization sent waves of both excitement and anxiety through her. When she stepped back into the open office floor, the quiet murmur of her colleagues stopped immediately. Heads turned, Confusion painted every face. Sarah, her closest colleague, was the first to speak. Emily, I thought you left? Emily managed a small, confident smile. There's been a change. I'm the new department manager. The room fell into stunned silence. A few people exchanged bewildered glances, while others looked openly skeptical. Sarah blinked. Wait, Sloane's gone? And you're in charge now? Emily nodded. That's right. I know this is sudden. And it's a lot to process. But starting today, we're turning things around. I'm going to need everyone's help to make this department something we can all be proud of. Tom, one of the more senior team members who had been close to David Sloane, scoffed quietly. So they fired Sloane and just handed you the job? Just like that? Emily turned to face him, meeting his skeptical gaze head on. It wasn't just handed to me. Tom, I've earned this, and if you give me a chance, I'll prove it to you. Tom didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. The tension in the room lingered, but Emily pushed forward. She couldn't afford to let doubt creep in, not from herself or anyone else. Emily spent the rest of the day in her new office, the office that had once belonged to David Sloane, getting her bearings. The room still carried the faint traces of his presence, a half-empty coffee mug on the desk, scattered papers, and his nameplate glaring at her like a lingering ghost. She made a mental note to have it replaced with her own name as soon as possible. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. The team needed her, and if she was going to prove herself, she had to act quickly. Emily straightened her posture, grabbed her notepad, and walked back out to the open floor. She didn't care that whispers followed her. She welcomed the challenge. Everyone, Emily said, raising her voice just slightly. Heads turned toward her. Let's meet in the conference room in 10 minutes for a team discussion. There's a lot to go over, and I want to hear from all of you. Sarah and a few others nodded. Tom's jaw tightened, and he muttered something under his breath, but he followed the group toward the meeting room like the rest. Inside the conference room, Emily stood at the front, trying to mask her nerves. She scanned the faces of her team, some curious, others skeptical, and a few outright indifferent. This was her moment to prove she belonged here. First, I want to address the elephant in the room. Emily began, her voice steady. Yes, this change happened suddenly. And yes, I know some of you are wondering why I'm standing here instead of someone else. She let her words hang for a moment, watching Tom shift in his seat. But I didn't ask for this role, I earned it. I earned it through years of hard work, just like all of you. And starting today, I want to make sure everyone here feels seen, valued, and heard. There was a beat of silence before Sarah nodded in quiet approval. Emily pressed on. I've reviewed the numbers, the project timelines, and the state of our department. She continued. It's clear that we have the talent to be one of the best teams in this company. But the truth is, we haven't been living up to our potential. That stops now. I'm here to make sure that each one of you has the tools and support you need to succeed. Tom folded his arms across his chest. And how do you plan to do that? Talk is cheap. Emily met his challenging gaze without flinching. By making real changes. Tom, we're going to prioritize communication and collaboration. No more working in silos. No more wasted hours on redundant processes. I want this team to start acting like a team. That means regular check-ins, clear goals, and open channels for feedback. A few people nodded in agreement. Tom didn't say anything, but his silence felt like a minor victory. Starting tomorrow, Emily said, I'll be holding one-on-one meetings with each of you. I want to hear your thoughts, what's been working, what hasn't, and what support you need from me. I'm not here to micromanage you. I'm here to help you succeed. The energy in the room shifted ever so slightly. The initial skepticism was still there, but Emily could feel it softening, even if just a little. All I ask for now is that you give me a chance. I know I have a lot to prove, and I'm ready to do the work, but I need all of you to do the same. Are you with me? There was a long pause before Sarah spoke up. I think we can give it a shot. A ripple of agreement followed. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was enough. Emily offered a small, confident smile. Good, let's get to work. The next day, Emily began her one-on-one meetings. She started with Sarah, whose open mind and willingness to adapt gave Emily a much-needed morale boost. I'm glad you're stepping into this role, Emily, Sarah said as they sat in Emily's office. I've seen how hard you work, but I think you'll need to keep proving it to people like Tom. He doesn't trust anyone easily. Emily nodded. I know, And I don't expect anyone to trust me overnight. I'll earn it. As the morning turned into afternoon, Emily listened to her team's concerns, many of which revealed just how poorly David Sloan had led them. There were complaints about lack of direction, favoritism, and credit stealing. Emily took careful notes, determined to address each issue one step at a time. When Tom's meeting rolled around, he walked into her office like he was walking into a courtroom, arms crossed, brow furrowed, ready for a fight. "Tom," Emily said warmly, gesturing to the chair, "thanks for meeting with me." "Yeah, sure," Tom muttered, dropping into the chair. "Let's get this over with." Emily didn't react to his tone. Instead, she leaned forward and said, "Look, I know you're frustrated. This has been a big shift for all of us. And I don't blame you for being skeptical. But I want to hear from you. What's holding this team back?" Tom blinked, surprised by her question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been here a long time. You know the team's strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. What do we need to fix?" Tom paused, clearly caught off guard. After a moment, he sighed. "Honestly, communication has been terrible. Projects overlap, people don't share information, and half the time, no one knows what anyone else is doing." Emily nodded. "That's good feedback, and I completely agree. I'm going to make fixing that one of my top priorities. But I can't do it alone. I need your help." Tom frowned. "My help? You're respected around here," Emily said. "People listen to you. I need you to help me build trust in this team again. You don't have to agree with me all the time, but I need you to work with me." Tom stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether or not to trust her. Finally, he exhaled. "Fine, I'll give you a chance. But if I don't like what I see, I won't hold back. That's all I ask," Emily said with a smile. By the end of the week, Emily had spoken with every member of her team. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere began to shift. People started communicating more openly, sharing ideas, and supporting one another in ways they hadn't before. It wasn't perfect. Tom still pushed back on occasion, and there were days when progress felt slow, but Emily knew they were moving in the right direction. As she sat at her desk late Friday afternoon, reviewing the notes from her meetings, she allowed herself a small moment of pride. She wasn't just surviving, she was leading. And for the first time, she felt like the role truly belonged to her. The office was beginning to settle into its new rhythm under Emily's leadership. Deadlines were being met, communication was improving, and productivity was on the rise. But not everyone was on board. The whispers started small, a snide comment in the hallway, a shared glance between team members when Emily walked past, and sarcastic mutterings barely audible as she left a room. Emily had expected resistance, especially given how quickly her promotion had happened. But this felt different. It wasn't about her abilities as a manager. It was about her. Late one afternoon, Sarah knocked on Emily's office door, her face tight with concern. "Come in," Emily said, looking up from her laptop. Sarah closed the door behind her and sat in the chair across from Emily's desk. She hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. "Emily, I think you need to know, some people on the team are saying things," Sarah said quietly. Emily frowned. "What kind of things?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. It's about how you got the job. They're saying that you didn't earn it, that the company promoted you because they wanted to look diverse." Emily felt her heart skip a beat, though she kept her face composed. "Who's saying that?" Sarah shook her head. "It's mostly the senior team, Tom, Rachel, and a couple of others. They don't say it outright, but they're spreading it around. I thought you should know." Emily leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of Sarah's words settle like a stone in her chest. The implication was clear. It didn't matter how hard she worked or how qualified she was. Some people didn't believe she deserved to be there. "Thanks for telling me, Sarah," Emily said finally, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I'll handle it." That evening, Emily sat in her car for a long time before starting the engine. The quiet hum of the office parking lot was soothing, but it did little to calm her mind. She had spent years working twice as hard to prove herself, to overcome every stereotype and hurdle placed in her path. But this hurt. The promotion she had fought so hard for, the role she had stepped into with confidence, was now being reduced to a label. Diversity hire. The words echoed in her mind, stinging like a slap to the face. The next day, Emily walked into the office with a renewed sense of purpose. If people wanted to challenge her, She would meet them head on. She wasn't going to let whispered prejudices unravel everything she'd worked for. Later that morning, Emily called a department-wide meeting, gathering everyone into the conference room. The tension in the air was palpable as the team sat around the table. Clearly unsure of what was about to happen, Emily stood at the front of the room, her hands steady on the back of a chair as she addressed the group. "I want to clear something up," she said, her voice calm but firm. "There have been rumors, whispers, that I got this job because the company wanted to meet some kind of diversity quota." A few heads snapped up, surprised by her directness. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Rachel stared at the table. "Let me make something perfectly clear," Emily continued, her voice rising just slightly. "I didn't get this position because of the color of my skin. I got it because I earned it. I have the results, the experience, and the leadership skills to back that up. If anyone here doubts that, you're welcome to come talk to me directly, face to face, instead of whispering about it behind closed doors." The room fell silent. Emily scanned the faces around the table, making eye contact with each of her team members. She didn't want to intimidate them, but she needed them to know that she wasn't going to ignore the problem or back down. "If anyone here believes they can do a better job than me, prove it," she said, her tone hardening. "Show me your work, show me your ideas, because I'm not here to waste time on gossip and petty rumors. I'm here to make this department the best it can be. And I expect every one of you to focus on that, not on me." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Sarah broke the silence with a quiet but firm, "I'm with you, Emily." Tom looked away, his expression unreadable. Rachel fidgeted, but she didn't say anything. Slowly, others began nodding their agreement. The room wasn't buzzing with excitement, but it wasn't hostile either. Emily had made her point. "Meeting adjourned," she said finally. "Let's get back to work." As people filed out of the conference room, Tom lingered behind, waiting until everyone else had left. He stood by the door, his arms crossed, and looked at Emily. "You didn't need to do that," he muttered, "calling us out like that in front of everyone." "Yes, I did," Emily replied evenly, "because this stops now. If you have a problem with me, say it to my face. Otherwise, let's move forward." Tom stared at her for a moment, clearly torn. Finally, he gave a grudging nod. "Fine, let's move forward." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into her work with even more determination than before. She wasn't just focused on fixing processes or meeting deadlines, she was proving, with every decision she made, that she belonged in her role. She implemented new team initiatives, holding brainstorming sessions where everyone was encouraged to contribute ideas. She launched cross-department collaborations that brought fresh perspectives to long-standing problems. Slowly but surely, the team began to see the results of her leadership. Sarah became her strongest ally, stepping up to support Emily at every turn. Even Rachel began warming up to her, offering constructive feedback instead of silent resistance. Tom remained a tough nut to crack, but Emily noticed that he had stopped undermining her. In fact, he was beginning to show quiet respect for her approach. One afternoon, Emily called Tom into her office. "I wanted to thank you," she said, surprising him. "For what?" Tom asked, his brow furrowed. "For stepping up," Emily replied with a small smile. "I know you didn't make this easy for me, but I think we've finally started to move in the same direction. And I appreciate that." Tom looked at her for a long moment before finally nodding. "You've earned it, Carter," he said, his voice gruff but genuine. "I didn't think you could handle it, but you proved me wrong." Those words meant more to Emily than Tom would ever know. The months that followed were some of the most challenging and rewarding of Emily's career. The department not only met its goals but exceeded them, earning praise from company leadership. The whispers and rumors had faded, replaced by something far more meaningful: respect. One evening, as Emily sat in her office reviewing the department's latest performance metrics, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. She had faced bias, doubt, and resistance, but she had risen above it all. She wasn't just a manager anymore. She was a leader, and she had earned every bit of it. Months had passed since Emily Carter confronted the whispers that had sought to undermine her. Under her leadership, the department had transformed into a more collaborative and productive unit. The team was cohesive, morale had improved, and even the most vocal skeptics had come to respect her. But success, Emily knew, rarely came without new obstacles. One crisp Wednesday morning, Emily received an email from corporate leadership. The subject line alone made her sit up straight. Urgent. Expansion and restructuring plan proposal, your leadership needed. Emily opened the email with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The company was expanding into 2 new markets and needed her department to lead the way. It was a high-profile opportunity that could make or break everything she'd worked for. But there was a catch. Corporate had suggested bringing in an external advisor to oversee the project alongside her. Later that week, Emily was introduced to the advisor, a man named Richard Grant. He was tall, middle-aged, and exuded confidence, too much confidence. I've heard a lot about you, Emily, Richard said as they shook hands in her office. I've been brought in to ensure this expansion goes smoothly. I'll be helping you oversee the team and make sure nothing slips through the cracks. Emily raised an eyebrow. Helping me oversee the team? The phrasing rubbed her the wrong way, but she chose her response carefully. I'm glad to hear that, she said calmly. I've already got a detailed plan for the expansion, but I'm sure your experience will be valuable. Richard smiled in a way that didn't quite reach his eyes. We'll see. Let's take it one step at a time. Emily's stomach tightened. There was something about Richard, his tone, his posture, that made it clear he didn't see her as his equal. The challenge was unspoken but unmistakable. As the weeks passed, Emily began to notice Richard's influence seeping into the department. He inserted himself into meetings, questioned her decisions in front of the team, and revised her project timelines without consulting her. During one meeting, as Emily was presenting the next phase of the expansion plan, Richard cut her off mid-sentence. I think we'll need to rework that, Emily, he said smoothly. It doesn't quite align with what corporate had in mind. Emily froze for just a moment, shocked by his interruption. She glanced at her team and saw their uneasy expressions. I've been in direct communication with corporate leadership, she replied, keeping her voice even. This plan reflects their priorities and the team's capacity. If you have concerns, Richard, we can discuss them after the meeting. Richard gave her a patronizing smile. Of course, just trying to ensure we're aligned. Emily knew exactly what he was doing. By undermining her in front of the team, Richard was planting seeds of doubt. She could see the flickers of confusion and hesitation on her team's faces. That evening, Emily sat in her office long after everyone else had gone home. Staring at the project timeline on her screen, she felt an anger bubbling inside her that she hadn't experienced in a long time. Why is this happening again? She thought about the whispers from months ago, the fight she'd already fought to prove her place. And now, here was Richard, trying to take control of her work, making it seem as though she wasn't capable of leading this project on her own. She wouldn't stand for it. Emily knew she needed to confront Richard directly. The next morning, she caught him as he was arriving and invited him into her office. Richard, we need to talk, she said firmly, closing the door behind him. Richard smiled as he took a seat. Of course, Emily, what's on your mind? Emily sat across from him, her gaze unwavering. You've been questioning my decisions in front of my team and overriding parts of my plan without discussing them with me first. That's not acceptable. Richard's smile faltered slightly. I think you're overreacting. I'm just doing what's best for the project. No, Emily said sharply. You're undermining me. I was chosen to lead this project because I've proven that I can handle it. If you have concerns about my leadership, you can take them up with corporate. But as long as I'm in charge, you will not go behind my back or question me in front of my team again. Richard's expression hardened, his arrogance cracking just a little. You're being defensive. I'm being clear, Emily replied. We can work together, Richard, but this stops now. Either respect my role, or I'll escalate this. Richard stared at her, clearly unused to being challenged. Finally, he nodded once. Fine, let's make this work. Emily didn't trust him yet, but she'd made her stance clear, and she wasn't backing down. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked tirelessly to reinforce her leadership with her team. She scheduled individual meetings with each of her team members to ensure they understood the project goals, addressed their concerns, and showed them she was still the one guiding the department. She made it clear that Richard's role was temporary, that she was the one they reported to. Slowly but surely, Emily began to see the team's confidence return. The expansion project was on track, and the team was performing at their best. Richard had stopped interfering. And while he still attended meetings, his role had become purely advisory. One afternoon, Sarah stopped by Emily's office with a smile. "You know, we've been hearing a lot of praise about how the expansion is going," she said. "Corporate's impressed. They're talking about how smoothly everything's been running." Emily felt a small smile tug at her lips. "That's good to hear." Sarah leaned against the doorframe. "And I think it's because you didn't let Richard walk all over you. The team saw that, Emily. It made us trust you even more." Emily felt a warmth in her chest. It hadn't been easy, but she had stood her ground. She had fought for her place, again, and won. The expansion project was a success. Not only had Emily's team met the deadlines, but they'd exceeded corporate's expectations. The department had become a model for other teams in the company. And Emily's leadership was finally being recognized on a larger scale. At the quarterly company meeting, the CEO took the stage to highlight the project's success. "I want to take a moment to recognize Emily Carter and her team," the CEO said, smiling. "Their work on the expansion project was exceptional, and their success is a testament to Emily's leadership and vision. Congratulations, Emily." The room erupted in applause. And as Emily stood up to acknowledge the recognition, she felt a wave of pride wash over her. She had overcome doubt, prejudice, and resistance, and she had led her team to success. As she sat back down, she caught Richard's eye across the room. He gave her a curt nod, no smile, no handshake, but it didn't matter. Emily had proven herself not just to him, but to everyone. She had earned this. The applause from the company meeting still echoed in Emily's mind as she returned to her office the next day. The recognition had been a powerful moment, solidifying her role not only as the head of her department but as a respected leader in the company. Yet, she knew that success often attracted new challenges. Richard Grant's presence, while more subdued now, was still a lingering reminder of the politics and power dynamics within the company. Though he had ceased overtly undermining her, Emily could feel his watchful eyes in every meeting, every presentation. His approval wasn't necessary, but his influence within corporate circles meant she couldn't afford to ignore him completely. "The only way to move forward is to keep proving myself," she thought. Emily's next goal was to solidify her department's place as the company's leader in innovation. The expansion project had given her team the confidence and visibility they needed. But she wanted more. She wanted her department to be seen not just as a success story but as a pioneer. One afternoon, Emily called her senior team together for a brainstorming session. She had been mulling over an idea for weeks, a groundbreaking partnership initiative that would connect their company with emerging tech startups. "I want us to think about how we can leverage innovation," she began, standing at the head of the conference table. "We've proven that we can handle big projects. But what if we became the bridge between our company and the next wave of technology? Imagine if we were the ones identifying startups that could revolutionize our industry. We could pilot their ideas, integrate them into our work, and set the standard for the future." The room buzzed with interest. But Emily didn't miss the flicker of doubt in a few of her team members' eyes. Tom, one of her more experienced team members, was the first to speak. "It's ambitious, Emily. But won't that stretch our resources? We're still recovering from the expansion project." Emily nodded. "I get it. It's a big leap, but we've built momentum, and I don't want us to lose it. If we approach this strategically, we can start small, maybe with 1 or 2 pilot partnerships, and scale up from there." Rachel chimed in. "I think it's a great idea. It's risky, sure, but it could position us as leaders in innovation. That kind of visibility could open up even more opportunities." Emily felt a surge of gratitude for Rachel's support. Slowly, the room began to warm to the idea. By the end of the meeting, they had outlined the beginnings of a proposal, a phased plan to identify and partner with startups. Starting with a pitch to the company's executive team. As Emily and her team worked tirelessly on the proposal, she started to notice subtle resistance from an unexpected corner, Richard Grant. During a meeting with senior leadership, Richard raised concerns about the feasibility of Emily's proposal. "This sounds impressive," he said, flipping through the slides with an air of skepticism. "But do we really have the infrastructure to support something like this? It feels like a distraction from our core priorities." Emily kept her expression neutral, though she felt her frustration rising. "With respect, Richard," she said, "this initiative isn't a distraction. It's an investment in the future. By aligning ourselves with innovative startups, we're not just staying relevant, we're positioning ourselves as leaders in the industry. The CEO nodded thoughtfully. I see both sides here. Richard, I understand your concern, but Emily makes a compelling case. Let's give her team the green light to pilot this initiative. If it shows promise, we'll revisit it for further expansion. Emily felt a wave of relief. She had won the first battle. But she knew Richard wasn't done. As the partnership initiative gained traction, Emily began to hear whispers around the office, familiar murmurs that carried a tinge of doubt and bias. Do you think she's taking on too much? One colleague muttered in the break room. Ambitious. Sure, another replied, but let's see if she can actually pull it off. The undertone was clear. The doubts weren't just about the project, they were about Emily herself. One afternoon, Sarah approached Emily with a concerned look. I overheard something, Sarah said hesitantly. A few people were saying that the only reason you're getting all these opportunities is because the company is trying to diversify its leadership. Emily felt a sting of anger but forced herself to stay calm. Thank you for telling me, Sarah, she said. I appreciate your honesty. Later, as she sat alone in her office, Emily let the frustration wash over her. No matter how much she accomplished, there would always be those who questioned her place, those who attributed her success to anything but her hard work and ability. But she wouldn't let them define her. The murmurs grew louder after Emily's partnership initiative was announced company-wide. It was a groundbreaking project, and many celebrated it, but others viewed it with skepticism. Emily decided it was time to address the issue head-on. At the next company town hall, she stood before a room filled with employees from every department. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her, some filled with curiosity, others with doubt. I want to take a moment to talk about something important, she began. This company has given me incredible opportunities, and I'm grateful for that. But I know that not everyone believes I deserve to be here. I've heard the whispers, the doubts. The room was silent, and Emily took a steadying breath. Let me be clear. I didn't get here because of quotas or optics. I got here because I earned it, because I've worked hard, because I've led my team through challenges, and because I believe in what this company can achieve. If anyone doubts that, I encourage you to look at the results my team has delivered. That's what speaks louder than anything else. The silence was heavy, but Emily saw a few people nodding, and even more avoiding her gaze. I'm not here to prove anyone wrong, she continued. I'm here to do the work. And if you're willing to join me, we can accomplish incredible things together. When she finished, the room erupted into applause. It wasn't universal, but it was enough. The partnership initiative launched with resounding success. 2 months into the pilot, Emily's department had already identified 3 startups that aligned perfectly with the company's goals. The first collaboration, a revolutionary AI-driven analytics tool, had saved the company thousands of hours in manual reporting. Even Richard Grant, who had initially doubted her, begrudgingly acknowledged her success in a meeting. I'll admit, Emily, I wasn't sure about this, he said, but you've proven me wrong. This initiative is impressive. Emily nodded, accepting the compliment without letting her guard down. She had learned not to rely on the approval of people like Richard. Her confidence came from within, and from the results she had delivered. As she walked back to her office that day, Emily reflected on her journey. She had faced resistance, bias, and doubt at every turn, but she had never let it stop her. And now, she stood not just as a leader, but as a symbol of resilience and strength. This is just the beginning, she thought, a determined smile spreading across her face. The partnership initiative brought Emily's department into the spotlight, and with it came a cascade of new opportunities and challenges. The startups they worked with thrived under the collaboration, and the company reaped the rewards in innovation and market leadership. Yet, as the department flourished, Emily found herself dealing with an increasingly visible undercurrent of tension. The rumors and biases about her leadership had quieted but hadn't disappeared. There were still whispers in hallways, still skeptical glances in meetings. One particularly jarring moment came during a networking event when a senior executive from another company remarked, "You've certainly made the most of the opportunities handed to you, Emily." The comment stung, but Emily responded with poise. Opportunities are only as good as the results you deliver. And I'm proud of what my team and I have accomplished. She didn't let it show. But inside, the remark lingered. Emily knew she was fighting battles not just for herself but for others who would follow in her footsteps. Emily decided she needed to address the deeper issues in the company. The success of the partnership initiative had shown her that innovation thrived in a culture of openness and collaboration. But for that culture to take root, the company had to confront its biases and break down barriers. At the next executive meeting, Emily made her case. "I'm proud of what my department has achieved," she began, her voice steady, "but I can't ignore the challenges that come with being one of the few leaders of color in this company. If we're serious about innovation, we need to be serious about inclusion, because innovation thrives on diverse perspectives." There was a moment of silence, the kind that always followed uncomfortable truths. Then the CEO nodded. "You're right, Emily," he said. "What do you suggest?" Emily outlined a proposal for a company-wide inclusivity initiative, one that would go beyond surface-level diversity efforts. It included mentorship programs, unconscious bias training, and a commitment to creating opportunities for underrepresented employees. The proposal was met with mixed reactions. Some executives were enthusiastic, while others hesitated, but Emily's determination won the day, and the initiative was approved. Implementing the inclusivity initiative proved to be one of the toughest challenges of Emily's career. It required navigating delicate conversations, addressing resistance, and confronting deeply ingrained attitudes. One of the first hurdles came from within her own department. Tom, who had grown to respect Emily as a leader, admitted his discomfort during a team meeting. "I'm all for creating opportunities," he said, "but sometimes it feels like we're focusing more on who people are than what they can do." Emily addressed him directly. "Tom, this isn't about lowering standards or prioritizing identity over ability. It's about making sure everyone has a fair chance to contribute and succeed. When we create a level playing field, we all benefit." The room was quiet, but Emily could see the wheels turning in her team's minds. Change was never easy, but she had learned to embrace the discomfort. It meant they were moving forward. Months turned into a year, and the inclusivity initiative began to take root. The mentorship program paired senior leaders with rising talent from diverse backgrounds. And the results were immediate. New voices brought fresh ideas, and the company's projects flourished with creativity and innovation. Emily watched with pride as one of her mentees, a young software engineer named Leah, presented an idea during a company-wide pitch day. Leah's proposal, a streamlined, user-friendly application for tracking workflow efficiency, was met with overwhelming enthusiasm. After the presentation, Leah approached Emily with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me," she said. "I never thought I'd have a chance to share something like this." Emily smiled, her chest swelling with pride. "You earned this, Leah. I'm just glad I could help you find your voice." As Emily's second year as department head drew to a close, the company hosted its annual leadership summit. Emily was invited to speak about her journey and the lessons she had learned along the way. Standing on the stage, she looked out at the audience, a sea of faces, many of them familiar, but more diverse than they had been when she first joined the company. "I've learned that leadership isn't just about delivering results," she began. "It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive. It's about challenging the status quo, even when it's uncomfortable. And most importantly, it's about lifting others as you rise." The applause was thunderous, and as Emily stepped off the stage, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced resistance, endured bias, and overcome doubt, not just from others but from herself. And she had emerged stronger, with a vision that had transformed not only her department but the entire company. Years later, Emily would look back on this period of her life as the foundation of something much greater. The Inclusivity Initiative became a model for the industry, and the partnership program she spearheaded continued to yield groundbreaking innovations. But her greatest accomplishment wasn't the accolades or the recognition. It was the legacy she left behind, a company culture that valued every voice and a path that made it easier for the next generation to follow. Emily's journey wasn't just about her own success. It was about proving that leadership is defined not by who you are but by what you do. And as she watched her mentees and colleagues rise to new heights, she knew that every battle had been worth it. The whispers of doubt had long since faded, replaced by the echoes of progress. And for Emily, that was the ultimate victory.